I hope you all enjoyed the nightmare finale of Board James. Just to be clear, this is not necessarily the final episode ever, but it's the final episode for the time being, until I plan out more. At the beginning of this year, 2015, I planned out 8 episodes with a story arc and continuity between them, so this is the last of the 8. In the same way that Dream Phone was the last episode at the time, that was a big episode, and it was the last one for a while until I started them up again. So like before, anything can happen. As you noticed, the Nightmare episode was pretty complex, perhaps confusing. I designed the story arc in a way that it would be fun to discuss and analyze, but if you want it all explained, then here comes the explanation. So this is your last chance to figure it all out for yourself. Although if you listen to all this, what I have to say, at the end, still there's going to be a lot left unsolved. So the Board James mythology is always expanding. First of all, it should already be clear from the Nightmare episode that in the world of Board James, in the logic, when people die, their soul or their life force is reborn into another world. So you probably already know, but just for the sake of explanation, that other world, that next world, exists inside of something like a game. Because we draw so much attention to games, we're focused on them, we lend our imaginations to them, that it makes them real. So what you do in that game affects that world, although we're not aware of it. As you saw in the episode, and if you retrace back to all the previous episodes this year, each game piece represents a person who's living in that world. If you're moving the game piece and the game piece dies, the same thing happens to that person. It's a domino effect. It's such a well-known phenomenon that the term domino effect is used in general whenever describing anything that sets off a chain reaction of events. The mythology is kind of like, if I were to compare it to movies, it's sort of like Inception and Jason and the Argonauts. So for the chain of events to keep happening, there always needs to exist another game inside of the game. After you die, you go into whatever game you played last or whichever one you're closest to. Fate decides. However, fate can be influenced by the players. The first person to enter the game becomes the game master. They have a lot of influence over the world, although it's subconscious. In Inception, they go into dreams, and there's always one person who's the dreamer. But here, it's the game master. So all the people who died in the world above, all the other players that join him in the game, if they all enter the same game, it's only the first person, the game master, who has this subconscious control. And they might not remember their past life. Everything gets wiped clean. It all depends how strong the person's memory is, what kind of things made an impression on them in their past life. Board James, for instance, happens to be obsessed with board games. He clings on to his childhood. And not only does the Game Master have influence on the world around them, but the characteristics of the people too. So when Bootsy dies first and goes into the Candyland game, it's his design. Everybody becomes all happy and joyful. So they could become completely different people in each life, in each world. But because Board James remembers so well that he keeps reimagining Mike and Bootsy to be just like their former selves. Though they're never quite the same. Bootsy's missing eye is back and things like that. Even though the Game Master is subconsciously creating the world and the characters, it's the gamers in the world above who are playing the game that they're in who are also unknowingly controlling them. So the control is happening in many different directions, sort of like the hands on a Ouija plancha. So it's a group effort. It takes all your powers combined, the living, the dead, the powers above, and the leader in charge of the game. So that's the overall mythology, but now on to the specifics. When you see me in the jail cell, this was the earliest known incarnation of the character that became Board James. So this is Board James World 1. I don't want to talk too much about this because I don't want to spoil it. I might want to save it for future episodes. I have a basic outline written which is still bouncing around in my head, so I'm still kind of thinking about this part. But basically you can already tell that he's in prison for murder. And while he's there, he's reading instruction manuals to board games, which is the only thing that reminds him of happier times. He's sentenced to death, and that's where Board James World 2 begins. So the first episode happens after that. Then Mike and Bootsy appear, who all existed in some form in the world above. Who were they in their past life? Cellmates? crime partners who double-crossed him? I don't want to say too much. Use your imagination. But basically, Board James, as the game master, gives them new characteristics, which is probably a combination of different types of personalities that he's known before. And because he's remembering the more innocent days, they take on more childish personalities. The home he lives in is a combination of different places he's known before. The video store makes a brief appearance, for example. The attic is like the subconscious part of his mind, where the things he's less fond of lie. Even the jail tends to appear often. You can see the chalk marks. And whenever he's reading from an instruction manual, the bars appear. So he developed an imaginary house that combines all the places he was in.
How do we get to an attic from the basement?
This house doesn't make any sense. Always in a different room.
When Mr. Bucket appears, who was Mr. Bucket in his past life? Perhaps a pedophile that he shared a cell with. As soon as they play the game of life, that begins the game of death, which is Dream Phone. This was the first episode where people start dying. At the end, Board James is presumably taken to jail, a reminder, some kind of deja vu of his past life. After the Dream Phone episode, there's a large time span between episodes, so this is kind of a foggy area that's best left unknown. But when Board James makes a cameo in the Nerds AVGN Games episode, he mentions that he used a get-out-of-jail-free card from Monopoly, so the logic of board games still applies in his imagination. So he's having dialogues with the nerd now, so from this point on, he's just going nuts. In the season starter this year, Omega Virus, he shows he's capable of splitting himself into more than one identity. So he's not even clear who he is anymore.
I think you did it. You didn't do it. I didn't do it.
The lie detector episode is when he starts trying to figure out the truth. The Ouija episode is when things get real crazy. He makes contact with the spirits of Elvis and Rodney Dangerfield, who become Bootsy and Mike.
Play with him.
This is open to interpretation, so I'll present two possibilities of what happened. When James slits his wrist and dies, he descends into World 3. He enters the Ouija game. When Mike and Bootsy died in the Dream Phone episode, they each went into separate games, the Elvis game and the Rodney Dangerfield game, and were each transformed into those respective characters.
Hunka bucket, fuck it.
So they all parted ways, but when James enters the Ouija board is different than other games. It's a trans-dimensional portal. Normally, all the different worlds branch out, but the Ouija is a parallel dimension, so he's able to cross over between the other dimensions. This is how the three of them meet again, and because all three of them are the game masters with their own identities, they're no longer under the influence of Board James, until they all touch the plancha and James calls upon the Ouija powers. They all descend into World 4. It's like the Ouija dimension spit them out into the next world. Sort of like one-dimensional plane flushing the toilet. And they're the turds. In the next world, the Hangman realm I'll call it, Board James is once again the game master because he entered slightly before everybody else. So now he's in control, or should I say his mind is in control. So he imagines Bootsy and Mike back to their normal selves. Or as normal as it was to Board James. This is where I give two possibilities. Is it really Mike and Bootsy? Or is it actually the spirits of Elvis and Rodney Dangerfield? Because they were real people. So did Board James actually meet them and then reimagine them as his old friends? Wacky Blasters and the Full House Urkel episode toy with the question of where Mike and Bootsy came from and who they are. The video games episode shows that the nerd is his split personality. Some people have said that they thought it was a prequel to the nerd, but I see it as two separate existences. 13 Dead End Drive hints more at James's past life as a murderer, and this is where he really begins tormenting his friends, and where all three of them die again. With Nightmare, obviously they die many more times after that. You can have lots of fun connecting all the deaths together. You'll notice James becomes more evil as they go down into these worlds. Bootsy and Mike must have done something wrong to him many worlds above before sending him down. He inhabits the lower worlds, kind of like Satan, and they've all descended into his dungeon hell. By the time they get to Battleship, that's World 9. There's no real end to the story, but we leave Board James dead, and we can only imagine where his soul goes next. You can tell there's a lot of thought put into this, but to be clear, I didn't know this whole story until after the Dream Phone episode. That's when I started thinking more in depth to all this. And that's what happens when you write stories over time. The backstories to the characters all grow and grow. Like when George Lucas made up Star Wars, he didn't originally know that Darth Vader was going to be Luke's father. That idea came up later. So that's what happens. I made sure that James's clothing becomes progressively darker as it goes on. And the shirts themselves sometimes give little hints. Ghosts, the electric chair from Ride the Lightning, Garfield's a cat, 9 lives, representing the 9 worlds. I planted the idea of the cat all over. If you look at my hats, Apple, Frankenstein, Top Gun, Empire, RCA, and the skull representing death, take the first letter of each, AFTER, death, after death. And the release dates of the episodes, if you look at that, it spells 1313 dead. Yeah, I had way too much fun, didn't I? And so can you. You can keep analyzing these. You could look deeper into them if you want. I hope to do more sometime, but for now, it was a nice fresh year for me. 2015, Board James was the focus for once, and it was really great because creatively I need to do things that are different all the time. We'll see what 2016 holds, and yeah, just have fun, enjoy the videos. Like in the world of Board James, it's all one big game.